The James Show Podcast.
I am your host, James Parker. Have you heard of Poppi soda? Do you know Poppi soda? Garrett, do you know Poppi soda? Or did you just hear about it in the pre-show meeting? Because we talked about it in the pre-show meeting. Focus, Garrett. Damn it. So Poppi soda is one of these brands that is supposed to be healthy. You're not supposed to drink soda because it's unhealthy, but Poppi soda is okay because it's healthy. It has health benefits. It's good for you. You're not eating junk food. You're eating health food. And so over the last 5 years, a lot of people bought Poppi thinking, oh, this is going to be good for my health. And what was the claims that they were making? Gut health. It's what they call a prebiotic. I think most people have heard of probiotic, which you're like, okay, that's like acidophilus and bifidus and the good bacteria that's in things like yogurt. But prebiotics, it's supposed to be similar. It's a fiber that helps aid with digestion and it's supposed to help you, not get the runs or whatever. And so they got sued. There's some class action lawsuits that went down in California. They all got combined into one big one. And then we just learned that Poppi lost their lawsuit. It turns out, yes, they do have prebiotic fiber in their soda, but it's such a trifling, minute, insignificant amount. There's no way it can have the health benefits that are promised by the company. Aha. Interesting. So there's a class action lawsuit. There's a big award that's coming with it, like $8 billion or something ridiculous like that. Now you can go get your share of Poppi money if you have some receipts over all the Poppi that you drank for the last 5 years. So go ahead if you're an absolute psycho that keeps up with all your receipts and catalogs them. For the rest of us, if you can't have any proof of purchase, you can still go make a claim on the honor system. You're just capped at $16 for the check that you can get off the lawsuit. Because per single can of Poppi that you drank between January 23rd of 2020 and July 18th of this year, you can get 75 cents per single can, $3 per 4-pack, $6 per 8-pack, or $9 per 12 or 15-pack. Now, if you have proof of purchase, there's no cap on the reimbursement you can get. You just have to submit it online or by mail, like with a stamp, by September 16th, 2025. I got news for you. Not only did I assume Poppi didn't have the meaningful gut health benefits it claimed, it has been my observation that most of these air quote healthy snacks and junk foods and whatnot are also in the category of a farce. I have a little more inside info than just this is what I've observed as a talk show host, which is what a lot of my segments are based on. But in this one, the last job I had, in fact, the job I had when I started working in radio, I was working at a place called Vitamin World, and it was in the mall. I worked at the one in Willow Bend. I worked at the one in Valley View Mall when that was still a thing before it got demolished. Richardson Square Mall, Stonebriar Mall. I got moved around a bunch. I was only there for a couple of years, but I'm kind of into health, and I read every label of every product that's in there. I read every magazine that came and sat on it. Remember, there used to be magazines in stores? I read every health and fitness magazine every month that came through that store. And I came to notice that about half of the stuff, I don't want to say half, a lot of the stuff that we were carrying, much like any of these vitamin stores, Vitamin Shop, Vitamin World, GNC, were worthless. A big chunk of them were worthless. I'm not going to say everything in there was worthless. My God, vitamin C, that's legit. When you go get an amino acid, that's legit. Creatine, protein powder, legit. There's a lot of legit stuff in there. There's also a lot of not legit stuff like echinacea, or if you're going to have some tree bark to prevent a cold or something. There's all kinds of things that you should be skeptical of. But one thing that I learned is that if things work, if these drugs, if these cures actually worked, they wouldn't be in a supplement shop. They would be in a drugstore. So if you go to a supplement shop, it's different in a drugstore in the fact that it is not regulated nearly as tightly, and for good reason. Whenever you see some of these health benefits that are on like cereal boxes, like Fruit Loops has this full day supply of vitamin C. Or, oh, well, I thought this was junk food. I wasn't going to feed it to my kids. I was going to feed them, plants and animals, actual healthy food. But if Fruit Loops says full day supply of vitamin C, there's at least some healthy option in there. Well, for a kid that's 8 years old, your full day supply of vitamin C is 25 milligrams. If you're an adolescent, 45 milligrams. If you're an adult, 90 milligrams. So not a whole lot. When I worked at Vitamin World, there was people that would come in there. They'd be taking 5,000 milligrams of vitamin C a day. Now that was on the high end, but it was quite normal for people to take 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C a day. So that's more than 10 times what you would find in a double serving of Fruit Loops. So what's going on there? When we have these standards, like who decided how much vitamin C we need a day? Is that the amount of vitamin C that we need to be our optimum level of health? Or is that the minimum amount of vitamin C that we need to consume just so we don't get scurvy or some disease? Were these rules written by a government bureaucrat who is concerned about the well-being of the donors from General Mills and Kellogg and whoever makes breakfast cereals or any of these other ones, these food corporations? They want those numbers to be as low as possible so they can tout health benefits. And then after they lie to you about how healthy it is, they can go to court and say, it's not a lie. It really does have its full day supply of vitamin C. And I believe it's only because the FDA hadn't written in the lies into law yet on this new prebiotic fiber angle. That's the only reason they didn't get away with it. I got news for you. The FDA is a complete farce. If they were there to prevent the food companies from lying to you about what's on the label, look at orange juice. Most orange juice that you buy, you can go find it like a Tropicana or some other name brand. It says natural on it. But that doesn't appear anywhere in nature. You have deoxygenated orange juice that after you take the oxygen out, kind of tastes like pond water, kind of looks like pond water. So they reinsert coloring, they reinsert flavoring into it. They just use natural coloring and natural flavoring. And so this thing that doesn't exist in nature, they can call it natural on the label. And you can't go sue them and say this is a lie. This doesn't appear anywhere in nature. They say, no, the FDA says this meets the definition of natural. So the FDA has become the process by which food companies can legally lie to your face when its intent, and the reason why a lot of people still think it exists, is they think it's there to prevent them from lying to you. No. It doesn't prevent it. And it doesn't just allow it. It facilitates the lying. That's the big lesson with Poppi. And George Carlin was on to this too.
The word natural is completely meaningless. Everything is natural. Nature includes everything. It's not just trees and flowers. It's everything. A chemical company's toxic waste is completely natural. It's part of nature. We're all part of nature. Everything is natural. Dog is natural. It's just not real good food.
My next guest, my good friend James Varney from Real Clear Politics. Welcome back to the big show.
Hi, James. Thanks for having me.
So we are the talk of the nation here in Texas. Our redistricting issues are on the tip of many tongues here. The governor of New York has made statements about it. Governor J.B. Pritzker in Illinois is hosting some of our fleeing Democrats. We had them speak with the governor of Massachusetts yesterday in a press conference. Governor Newsom of California says if we go through with it, he's going to do the same damn thing. So over here in Texas, we thought we were just kind of minding our own business, dealing with our own maps. Is this about to be the next national trend? Is mid-decade redistricting?
Well, it's funny that it seems to be becoming a big story because it's gone on forever. Like, this is an old story. I guess the Democrats are obviously quite concerned about what might happen in Texas, because if you look at congressional apportionment or congressional districting, and you think that it's something that is supposed to reflect the voters in the state, Texas is actually a lot better in terms of its representation, partisan representation in the House, than those other states.
Wait, explain why. Why do you say that? What number are you referencing for that?
So, all right. So if you look at Texas, right, like Kamala, I guess, got about 42% of the vote in Texas, and 12 of your 38 representatives. That's 31%. That's pretty close. Now you look at Massachusetts, right? You just mentioned that their governor's shooting off her mouth about it.
Yeah.
Well, Trump got 36.5% there, and there's 0 of 9 congressional seats in Massachusetts. Every one of them is Democratic. In Illinois, you just mentioned Pritzker, who really ought to be, I think, on Ozempic or something rather than worrying about Texas.
Dang, why are we taking shots at Pritzker's for based on his appearance here?
All right. Withdrawn.
Okay.
Anyway, Illinois has 3 of 17.
Hang on, Garrett, did you strike that from the record?
I did. I looked that up. So, but Trump got almost 44% of the vote. And that's 17%. California, which we know has a supermajority of Democrats in Sacramento, also less than 18%, even though Trump got 40%. So what I'm saying is that Texas right now, its congressional map more closely resembles the voting patterns of the Lone Star State than any of those other Democratic states. All of those other Democratic states have been completely gerrymandered in the last 25 years. So this has been going on forever, and they want to pretend that Texas, considering it, is the first time it's ever happened.
Okay, so we all agree that all states are gerrymandered and all maps are gerrymandered. I think there is one thing different that in the Texas one is that it's happening in the middle of the decade and it hadn't been ordered by a court.
Well, okay, but the truth is that they have to do it, I believe, every 10 years,
yes.
Right? The census comes out every 2020, so the next one would be 2030. And there are courts that have ordered it. Louisiana, where I am, there's a plan right now that's before the Supreme Court. But that doesn't mean that that's the only time, right? I mean, it's not like this is something that the Texas legislature doesn't have the perfect right to do when it wants. No one is making this up out of whole cloth. And I find it odd. This isn't, speaking of things that are old, I've seen Democratic state lawmakers pull this kind of stunt before. They did it in Wisconsin, if you remember, where they all fled to Chicago or something to try and make it so that the legislature couldn't have a quorum. So there's nothing really new about what's happening in Texas. It's just that the Democrats are squawking really loudly about it.
So in Texas, the conversation has turned to what should happen to these lawmakers who flee the state, specifically to avoid doing their job. Now, a lot of us would like to see them go to jail. I would like to see them go to jail. Not like solitary confinement for the rest of their life, but, 30 days, 90 days in jails. Just something to actually punish them, not just a fine, which doesn't change their life one whit. But I think a bare minimum should be you lose your seat.
I'm not a lawyer, James, but I know, I read what Governor Abbott is saying he wants to do. Have they issued arrest warrants for some of these guys? And I know there's been talk about bribery, given that Beto O'Rourke and Soros PACs, I guess, have been footing the bills for some of these Democratic lawmakers that went AWOL. I didn't even realize Beto O'Rourke had enough money to do something like that.
What are you talking about? No, Beto O'Rourke married a very, very rich family. His wife is from one of the richest families in El Paso. So this is why he has the bottomless well to go to run for office every couple of years. I bet he runs for something else again. Now, I noticed you did something quite clever. One of your latest works here has a dad joke in the headline. I'll read it for everyone who's not looking at the website right now. James Varney's latest article. America's critical mining industry finds itself in a deep hole. See what you did there? I see what you did there, because it's mining and they're in a deep hole, which is what miners do. And
yeah, there's no fooling you, James.
Nothing gets by me. So give me the details. How is America's critical mining industry in a deep hole?
The biggest problem is China on this one. And of course, there's been a lot of talk about that, right? Like Trump has been saying how we need to make sure that our supply chains aren't dependent on China. And in particular, this was talking about these so-called rare earth minerals and other things. If you look at the U.S. identifies 50 key minerals. This is a list that the government is supposed to update periodically. If you look at that and you see the ones that we identify as key, in some of them, these rare earths, we're importing 90% or more of them. So, and this is stuff that, the Greens love it, right? Because a lot of the solar and wind equipment is dependent on this, but it's got very important Defense Department applications. It's tech. It's in your smartphone. It's in your Kevlar. I mean, this is stuff that sort of both everyday life and the big national security issues are dependent on. So it's very important that the mining capabilities of the U.S. get brought up to speed. That's what the story's about.
Right, and I find myself having to Google things that I didn't even know existed. Like I had to look up scandium. It's like, that's an element? What the heck is scandium? I've never used that before, but apparently we haven't had a scandium mine in the United States, I guess, in my lifetime?
That's correct. In fact, in my lifetime as well. The one up in Wyoming that we talk about, the Brook mine, that they just sort of reopened it, but they've just made it into a rare earth mine. It's the first one in the United States in 70 years. Now, you're also seeing money get spent on this, right? So there's a place called Mountain Pass out in California. And there's another place in Nevada that I wrote about in my last story about how much money the Department of Energy spent after Biden lost the election. Those places are also bringing lithium and things like this that are crucial as well up. And the government just invested $400 million in that Mountain Pass place in California.
Who did? The government did?
Correct. The Defense Department bought $400 million worth of
okay, the Pentagon did it. That makes sense.
Yeah. Well, it's all, I mean, but what we talk about in the story is it's kind of the flip side of the Green New Deal, right? So before you had the DOE, the Energy Department, and the EPA spending billions. Now it's the Defense Department. Now, of course, also the Interior Department is getting involved in what they call the U.S. Geological Service. So money is still getting spent. And you could say that all those things that I just mentioned, smartphones and Kevlar and et cetera, are more important than windmills. But regardless, it's still an expensive item and the government is spending money on it.
James Varney from Real Clear Politics. The environmental argument in some of these rare earth mining issues drives me insane. You know, they don't want us to strip mine over here, and so we have to do all this stuff that's more dangerous, it's more costly, it's less efficient, it's slower, it's longer. And instead of doing it here, if you put these requirements on, then we just go buy it from China, who does what? Strip mining. So they don't actually prevent the strip mining. They just prevent us from profiting on our own minerals and instead having to ship that money to our biggest geopolitical foe.
Well, we see that kind of shell game all the time, it seems to me, with a lot of the environmental things. I mean, China has invested billions of dollars in new coal plants. And if you look at emissions worldwide, it's almost exclusively these days coming from China and India and places where if you and I were Chinese or Indian, I'd be saying, I'm not going to play your luxury Green New Deal games. I'm trying to bring my economy up to what you are, which you did on fossil fuels. So it's all fine if it goes on somewhere else, apparently.
Right.
But we have to handcuff ourselves. And you mentioned that China obviously is a geopolitical foe, so to speak, of the United States. There's also other humanitarian things going on, James, like the mining that goes on in places like Congo. You know, there's child labor, there's terrible things going on in these places. So there are a lot of reasons beyond the mere economics of it that the U.S. should be getting ahead of the curve in this one.
Well, I'm not going to lie to you and say I read the whole article because it's so damn long. How long does it take you to write one of these articles? This is like a white paper. This is a short story.
I mean, we try to be thorough. That one actually, it took a little while to come up. I've been done with that. In fact, I'm writing another story today. You know, we try to be thorough, James. We try to talk to a lot of different people, and we try to guard against coming in with preconceived notions. And that takes time. And that's why we hope people go to Real Clear. And if they want to write checks, we're tax-free.
Well, good, because I'm so glad you're on the show today because I really needed my scandium update. I was wondering really what's going on. You know, one of the hallmarks of good comedy is when it's timeless. You see that with, when's the last time you watched an episode of Seinfeld? The amazing thing about that is it was made in the 90s when we didn't really have cell phones like we have them now. Not everyone had one. Remember, we had answering machines. And there was a whole episode about answering machines in there. And there was whole episodes about things that only existed in the 90s. And they don't exist now. We don't live life like that. You know, we do most of this stuff on our phone. It's still funny. George Carlin, absolutely stands the test of time. And George Carlin gets political credit from both sides of the aisle because he will make fun of liberals and environmentalists and things like that. And then he will turn around and he'll make fun of conservatives and religious people and things like that. However, it doesn't seem like either side really gets butthurt about it because the first rule is it's funny. The second rule is it's based in a kernel of truth. And third, it's not really hateful. You understand? It's not really intended to dehumanize someone. It's just making fun of people's patterns. So that's good stuff. Now, earlier, George Carlin was on the show because this drink had gotten a lawsuit and it lost the lawsuit because it didn't really have the health benefits that it claimed. And I was making the case of the word natural is a great example of how the government and the Food and Drug Administration, not only do they not prevent lying to you or they're indifferent to lying to you, they allow lying. They codify and legalize lying to you. And so we stopped on this one word, natural, which you see on a lot of food products. And what a weird adjective this is to add to food.
The word natural is completely meaningless. Everything is natural. Nature includes everything. It's not just trees and flowers. It's everything. A chemical company's toxic waste is completely natural. It's part of nature. We're all part of nature. Everything is natural. Dog is natural. It's just not real good food.
And that's something that stuck with me. I probably saw that bit, 20 years ago? And so many times when I've gone into a restaurant or picked up a package in a grocery store or looked at some review online and it uses the word natural, that's what I think of. I think of dog squeeze. Oh, yeah, dog squeeze is natural. I usually say the real word. But, that applies to other words that are used, not just for marketing in general, but specifically for food.
Got to look at some advertising lingo, especially food advertising. You know the people. Fresh, natural, hearty, old-fashioned, homemade goodness in a can. That kind of stuff. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at some of these words. Old-fashioned. When you hear old-fashioned, you're supposed to think, oh, this goes back to the old days. Right. The old days. Before we had sanitation laws. Before hygiene became popular. Back when botulism was still considered a sauce. Homemade. You see homemade in the restaurants, too. Homemade soup. I don't care how much the amphetamine-driven waitress with the Marlboro lines in her face reminds you of your mother. The soup is not homemade.
Oh, I just can't cheer for that one hard enough. That's something I say when I go to restaurants and they're like, this is homemade beef stew. It can't be homemade if it's in a restaurant. That's what the word means. It means it's not made in a restaurant. It's not made in some factory setting. It's not coming out of a can. It's made in a home. We're not in a home. It wasn't made in a home. Did you make this in your home and then you brought it up here? No, you didn't. So I have a problem with that. Not that it's like affects your life or has any sort of negative impact, but it's just lying to your face. Advertising, just lying to your face. George Carlin explains why he doesn't vote.
And secondly, I don't vote because I believe if you vote, you have no right to complain. People like to twist that around, I know. They say, well, if you don't vote, you have no right to complain. But where's the logic in that? If you vote and you elect dishonest, incompetent people and they get into office and screw everything up, well, you are responsible for what they have done. You caused the problem. You voted them in. You have no right to complain. I, on the other hand, who did not vote, who, in fact, did not even leave the house on election day, am in no way responsible for what these people have done and have every right to complain as loud as I want about the mess you created that I had nothing to do with.
Thank you very much. That's the great George Carlin. I wish we had more time with him, but at least we have YouTube. All right, are you a Brian Kilmeade fan? You see him on Fox and Friends. You can hear him on our sister station, KLIF. He's going to be back in Dallas. He was just here a few months ago. He's coming back August 23rd. This is for his History, Liberty, and Laughs tour. It's going to be at the Windspear Opera House, not too far from where I'm sitting right now here in Dallas. And if you want to try and win some tickets from us, you can text the word Liberty, because it's the History, Liberty, and Laughs tour. Text Liberty to 800-288-9227. It's the same as the call-in number, same phone number. Text the word Liberty to 800-288-9227. 9227. That'll enter you in our contest to win a pair of tickets. And really, your odds are pretty good. You'd be surprised at how few people text in on this. You know, you may think, well, it's a metropolitan area of 8 million people. Yeah, but 8 million people aren't texting in. It's a few hundred, maybe a few thousand at the most. So go ahead and text Liberty to 800-288-9227. Try and win a pair of tickets from us. Or if you want to go ahead and buy them, go to attpac.org, like the AT&T Performing Arts Center, attpac.org to get tickets to Brian Kilmeade's History, Liberty, and Laughs tour. All right, that's going to about do it for the James Show today. When I get out of here, I'm going to go put up the podcast. Go find it. Also, find me on social media whenever you're goofing around, when you're in the bathroom, when you're waiting in line at the grocery store, when you're sitting on your couch, not watching TV, but watching your phone, scrolling through social media. You know, we have social media. Find WBAP. You can find the guys from the morning show. Hal, Jay, and Ernie both put up funny stuff on a regular basis. There's the James Show. You can find Casey's stuff. You can find our sister station, KLIF. But we have it on Facebook, YouTube, X, all the good stuff. So go check us out there. And, the James Show continues the other 21 hours a day when I'm not on the air. Stick around. The great one, Mark Levin's coming up next. I'm James Parker. This has been the James Show on News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP.
The James Show Podcast.